The next question will be for the young folks on the panel, and mainly for Skinder, Ruth, and Eden. So, Skinder, growing up as an Ethiopian American, navigating two different cultures, what type of challenges did you encounter in middle school, high school, and college? And if you can tell us how you were able, definitely you were able to handle it because you were able to go to Duke and graduate. Please, can you share with us how you were able to handle these challenges? And did you receive any guidance on how to deal with these challenges? And then if you can give us any advices to the Ethiopian American youth in the audience.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest difference growing up in the South was that my name was different. That was the biggest difference. I'm black, I look black, so the biggest difference was, oh, his name is different. And what does that mean? And then, of course, with that came, when your parents came around, why do you kiss them 3 times? Like, there are different things, right? Like, why are your parents not eating dairy and meat during this time of year? So just those nuances. I think early on, obviously I started at home, like I had a very clear foundation of who I was, start from a young age. My parents made sure to instill that in me. So, having that solid foundation, when I was met with anything that would challenge that foundation, I was able to overcome it. Not to say that like I didn't feel insecure at any point. I mean, growing up as a kid, obviously there are moments when, especially in this area, and it's changed now, but in this area when there weren't a lot of Ethiopians, there weren't a lot of people that could relate to your home experience, and it was just kind of like you were the other. You weren't whatever everybody else was. You weren't white. You weren't necessarily African American, even though you identified as such. But I think the biggest thing was, I had a diverse group of friends growing up, and their parents had an understanding of my parents. So because of that, the understanding of the culture came about that. And so I would say, like, from a parental standpoint, it would be get to know your kids, your kids' friends' parents. That's very important, because if their parents have an understanding of where you're coming from, then they can pass that along to their kids, and there won't be as much friction. And then as far as like, as a kid growing up, it's really just having to understand, I am different, and embracing that. I think, there are 2 ways of looking at that, right? You can say, oh, I'm different and I feel bad about it, or you can say I'm different and that's a good thing, and that's a cool thing. I'm different from everybody else. I mean, it's just like any other thing, right? If you're in school and somebody is, and you have the new pair of tennis shoes, and you have, then it's like you're the cool guy in school. So why not see it like that? And I think that's, honestly, I probably started to feel that way towards high school, because I embraced that diversity right before I did it. So see it just like anything else. I have something about me that's different from everybody else, and that makes me different, and so you should want to get to know that. And I think that's what helped me. It helped a lot in college, because in college, when I got to college, my first time being in school with more than 1 Ethiopian, there was a sizable Ethiopian population. That's why we were able to start that size, because there was that size. And so that also changed my perspective, because then it definitely was cool. And then also it was like, growing up, I always identified as Ethiopian, but also as black, as African American. A lot of my friends were African American. And when I got to Duke, I was able to see the diversity in black people. In the South, black means one thing, but at Duke, it meant Jamaican, it meant Nigerian, it meant Ethiopian. And I saw being Ethiopian embraced in black culture, which I think shaped my perspective now too. So, I mean, if you're growing up now and you're in high school, elementary school, middle school, just see it like it's something cool. Like, not everybody has what you have. So look at it like that. And then if you're in college, you're over 18, so you're an adult. So you should be proud of who you are. So I was thinking that from that aspect. And then parents, I would say, just try your hardest to really instill the pride in the culture. I think a lot of the people that I ran into that maybe didn't embrace their culture, it wasn't a fault of their own, it was because there wasn't a pride in their culture instilled from the beginning. And so, if you could talk to your kids on Marinya, if you could take them to Ethiopian events, if you could bring them around other Ethiopians, then I think, you'll have done a lot already right there without having worked too hard. So, yeah, in sum.
Thank you. So, Helena, growing up in Maryland, definitely there's a big Ethiopian community. What was your experience, and if you had to deal with a lot of challenges, how were you able to handle it?
So my experience is a little bit different from Iskandar's because being in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area is a huge, huge, huge Ethiopian population. And growing up, most of my friends were actually, I grew up with first like large family of cousins, and then most of my friends, because my parents, the children of my parents' friends, were also Ethiopian, obviously. So I grew up in that circle. So sleepovers and birthday parties and all of that. So really outside of the classroom, I identified very closely to my Ethiopian culture. And then, so as I got older, but then when I go into the classroom, the question of who am I, as Iskandar said, like as far as identifying with the racial groups, because there wasn't, the school that I went to, I was the only Ethiopian for a very long time until some other students started enrolling. But so there was a question of what is she? Is she black? Is she Hispanic? Because my skin is lighter, my hair is curly, so now they think I'm Dominican. They don't believe me that I'm black, but if I say I'm black, then I'm mixed. All this stuff. So it's like racially there was a huge, until I reached about college, I don't think I really knew to identify myself as black. I just would say, yeah, I'm not mixed, but I'm Ethiopian, and I find myself explaining, but why do I have to explain who I am as a person to anybody? I'm a black woman who has Ethiopian parents, so I'm an Ethiopian American, essentially. And then, okay, so part of your question was what challenges, like even in school?
Yeah, in high school, middle school, high school.
Some of the challenges, a lot of the cultural aspect, I think Iskandar spoke on. I want to talk about challenges when someone challenges you in school. Like when I was in middle school, I was given the challenge of someone said, I had a teacher that thought for whatever reason I couldn't make it in a certain class. And she encouraged me to go to a lower level class. I was in an accelerated math class, and she was trying to get me into a lower level class. But because my parents, because they said, no, you are able to do the work, and you are excelling in this class, and the other class is moving too slow for me, they insisted that I stay in that class. And that their belief in me, so your parents' belief in you, helps you to accelerate. Because I started to doubt myself when a teacher told me, you can't do that. And so from then on, throughout high school, I was in honors math classes, and then college, I continued down one path, but I ended up down in a more math and science path, but now I'm in law school, so I changed that a little bit. But it's because my parents believed in what I could do that made me believe. And I'm not less than anybody else for me to be pushed down by somebody that thinks that I can't do it. And so I think that translated into a lot of things that I ended up doing. And yeah, and a lot of, like socially, sometimes because of our cultural differences, in school, there's always, it's difficult. In high school, you may not have been exposed to some things that some of the other kids may have been exposed to. So it was difficult, but because I had a strong community outside of the classroom, it wasn't that hard because I still had a strong social network outside of the other American kids. And then in college, obviously in Maryland, we had a big population of Ethiopians. So.
Great, thank you. So growing up in Charlotte, how was your experience, Ruth?
Okay, well, my experience is a little different from theirs too. In Charlotte, we've always had a strong Ethiopian community, but as far as at school, when there weren't Ethiopian children around me, so I didn't really have any peers that were my friends who were Ethiopian. As far as identifying myself as Ethiopian, my parents have always, exposed me to our culture, and they speak to me in Amharic, and we go to an Ethiopian church and everything like that. But as far as how the other kids saw me, I don't remember it being a factor in elementary school as much. The kids would ask about my hair, and because I've had more hair, it was like, oh, is that real? Is that yours? They would pull on my braids, that kind of thing. But didn't really go past that. And then in middle school, I was always asked, what am I? Am I black? Am I Indian? Am I Indian is always a big one. And they kind of focused on that. And then high school is kind of like that too, but it wasn't until college that people recognized me as Ethiopian, and I think that goes along the lines with what you said, because there are more Abasha people around. People know more of what Ethiopian is or what Ethiopian looks like. So yeah, that's as far as identity goes. Challenges faced in school I would probably say a balance between academic and social life, because we have this Ethiopian culture. The way or how strict your parents are, how lenient they are, and the things that they let you do might be different from some of your peers, and I think that a lot of Ethiopian youth struggle with that, and I did too, but I think a big part of overcoming that struggle is just opening up communication with parents, and realizing that you do have to have a balance. Sometimes it's easy to get blindsided and think, okay, my parents want me to do well in school. Well, school all the time. How come I don't get to do anything, you know? And then not everyone follows the same paths that we've followed. They kind of fall into the pitfalls of what more dangerous aspects of what a social life has to offer. And I just think it's important to build strong communication with your parents to head towards more of a good path, so that we can celebrate things like this and moving on into higher education and that sort of thing. So that's family. And then just, I think as far as friends go, I've had a diverse group of friends growing up too, and I've always had friends that respected my Ethiopian culture and the way that my parents handled things. So I think it's important to have friends that you can confide in and relate to, and will understand that you have a different way of living, they have a different way of living. So to respect them.
All right.